Good evening, my friends. How are you? Welcome to another edition of Wednesday Night Live with me, Mike Avery, here in my studio at the house. Hello, Sean. Good evening. How are you? Tommy, always a pleasure. My buddy Craig, nice to have you along with us. Randy, Johnny Bowler, the Bear Whisperer. How you doing, Johnny? Bruce, Michelle, nice to have you along with us. Dan, Mike Hampton. Mike, first, I appreciate that text that you sent me. That means a lot. And then congrats on your big Ohio buck. I posted that on the Facebook page. Mike Hampton of Mike's Tire Sales in Calcallan. A really, really good guy. Stephen, good evening. Jeff, nice to have you along with us. Rabbit Homesteading, Bob Keatsman. Always a pleasure, Bob. How are you tonight? Again, my name is Mike Avery. Hey, Ken, good evening. Joe. Always a pleasure to have you along with me tonight on Wednesday Night Live. I just blew in the door here. I actually made it over to church. I skipped out a little bit early so I could be with you here tonight. I'm looking at some text going back and forth between my son and my grandson about hunting this weekend. They're making plans. Excellent. Thank you, Jim. I appreciate that. Johnny said he's been lazy on hunting, but you got everything done, Johnny. So what's it matter, right? Nice work, Johnny Bowler. The Bear Whisperer. Oh, here's a text. I just got a text from Kamala Harris. She wants me to donate $40 or $80 before midnight tonight. Should I do it? I don't think so. Terry checking in from Hemlock, no longer in Shingleton. Well, Terry, that is that's a change in lifestyle, huh? What brought you downstate, or were you originally from downstate? I don't know if I know that or not. But welcome to Life Below the Bridge. Chad, good evening. Jason, how are you? Thanks, Mike. I appreciate that. Folks congratulating me on my doe. I did shoot a nice doe last Thursday night, and it felt good. I had forgotten how long it had been since I'd shot a deer. My son James was reminding me he thinks the last whitetail that I shot was with him in Kansas out of a tree stand bow hunting while I was still doing the TV show. And that's been like 15 years. I think it's been 15 years since I've shot a deer. And this one felt pretty darn good. Uncle Johnny, how are you? Say hello to Aunt Debbie. We will see you guys tomorrow when we do a few rounds of golf in the North Country. Looking forward to it. Jim's heading out fishing. Good luck tonight, Jim. Cooler night, water temps coming down. Should be a good night to fish, right? Hey, Linda. I appreciate you saying that very much. Ed Bolanowski. Angie checking in from Cleveland. I was going to say, Angie, all well? Okay, just to check up. Glad to hear that. Jason, good evening, buddy. How are you? Nice to have you along with us. Roger checking in from Northeast Oklahoma. Temps are finally catching up to fall. Amen to that. Matthew's with us tonight. He says, good evening, Mike. Watching closed caption from my tree stand in Reed City. Only a doe so far. Real quiet. You've only got a few more minutes, Matthew. Take advantage of it. Hey, Ron St. Louis of Northern Wilderness Bear Outfitters. Ron, how you doing this evening? Johnny says it feels so good to get home and sit down and not have a damn thing to do. Good for you, Johnny. Guys like you and Ron St. Louis, you guys work your tails off for your clients during bear season. So good for you. Hey, Ron, are you moose hunting this fall, Ron? Did you or anybody else get a tag? You're going to be out there chasing moose? Was raised in Merrill when younger health problems brought you back. I'm sorry to hear that, Theory. Oh my gosh, Mike did a header in the shower, cracked some ribs and other stuff. I'm going to have to have first bow hunt tomorrow, finally. Well, Mike, I'm sorry to hear that. I hope, I mean, it sounds like you're gonna be okay. Um, Good luck to you. Jim says, "Good moon. I haven't had a skunk or a limit so far." Speaking of that good moon, that full moon, we are seeing daylight activity of bucks on our trail cameras and cameras on the surrounding properties. And I'm actually quite surprised at the quality of deer that are wandering around that section. Julie, good evening. Jim, thanks for joining us. Michael, always a pleasure. Hello, Eric. You don't have your truck and it's driving you stir crazy. Johnny, relax, buddy. Learn to relax. Go over to Andy's. That'll relax you. Tommy says, Matthew, I'll send some deer your way. Gene, good evening. Jay says, congrats on the doe. Did you get the angler quest out of the water? Thank you, Jay. The angler quest is not out of the water yet, but it's ready to rock. I brought the trailer down to my buddy Doug's. It's about a mile from here. Just waiting probably for my son James to get a day off. When he can give me a hand, we'll go over, we'll pull it and be done. I'm going to talk more about Angler Quest in a few minutes, though. Mike Streeter, good evening. How are things in paradise? Ed says fresh scrapes on their property the last few days. William, good evening. Randy says, good evening, Mike. Going to pull the tune from the marina either Friday or Saturday and into storage. Go dogs. Randy, help me out, will you? Are you the Randy who's Tony's friend, Randy? What's throwing me here is, if so, I didn't realize that you were in Sunset, or are you? They turned the water and the power off at the marina Tuesday. I was out there. No, they did it Tuesday. I was out there Monday, and I washed the boat down real good and cleaned it up real good. And all I got to do now is pull it and take it up to Linwood Beach. Johnny says, after supper, I'm headed over. Tell everybody there I said hi. I made it out of there upright. I figured that was a win. Venison chops are great on the grill. I bet they are. Ron says, I did hunt for a cow moose and had my opportunity opening day and opted not to shoot. Gotcha. Lisa, with a reminder, 25% of Michigan hunters are not registered to vote. Register and vote. Yes, please. Looks like Tommy and Matt are working together. Johnny says, I have to take a call. I can't believe people don't know it's Wednesday night and I watch Mike. Good point. Hello, Mike. Been a while since I've caught Wednesday Night Live. Life gets in the way. Indeed, it does. Jeff, you are forgiven, my friend. Cliff, good evening. Mike Sills, Michigan Outdoorsman. How are you? Scott says, I heard you on KJC recently. Excellent. Jerry says, hey, Mike, where are the Bucks? Nothing like last year. It's still early. Cameron, good evening. How are you? Pheasant opener Sunday. Thank you, Cameron, for that reminder. Oh, thank you, Randy. Okay, yeah, shallow water rat, Tony's friend. That's what was throwing me off. You are at Bay Harbor. Okay, got you, Randy. All right. And yes, go dogs. Tommy says, try a little light rattling. Doug Ward, Cap, how you doing this evening, Doug? I was at the Angler Quest QUEST owners, not owners, dealer meeting Monday. I'm going to talk about that coming up. A couple of other things I want to answer here. Greg, good evening. Real respect. Good evening, Real Respect. It was great to talk bluefin at the Greenway Outdoors premiere. Wicked fun. Kyle, Jeff, AJ, and Ryan are awesome upcoming Michigan stars. Real Respect. I could not agree with you more. Those guys from Greenway Outdoors are some of the finest people I've ever seen in the outdoor industry. They're young guys. They're hard workers. They respect God. They respect the resources, and they respect hard work. I have much respect for those guys. So Real Respect, yes. It was great talking to you, and they are great guys. In fact, Kyle Green of Greenway Outdoors is on the radio show this week. More on that as I get to the rundown for this week's show. Jerry, good evening. Mike's been doing good on duck hunting. Thanks for posting your niece's bucks photo. Linda, I wondered what the connection was there. I saw that there was some connection, but I didn't figure out that was your niece. And yes, how cool to see the northern lights in the background. Now, Linda, does she hunt your property? Don't you have land in that part of the world? Dan, good evening. Gene says, hello, Doug Ward. Brian says, good evening, Mike. What would be a good, inexpensive crossbow? Can't pull your compound back anymore. I would take a look at Killer Instinct, a Michigan company. They are a good bow, uh, pretty inexpensive. Bear Archery, another one to take a look at. Bear Archery makes some excellent lower quality gear. The 10 points you're going to pay an arm and a leg. The Ravens you're going to pay an arm and a leg. I did get a 10-point just because I wanted one I could decock. That's something to take a look at. Do you need to decock your bow? For years and years, I shot a Darton and I couldn't decock them. And I said, you know what? When it's time to really spend some money and get a nice bow, I want a decocking bow. If Darton had a decocking bow, I'd be shooting a Darton right now. Tommy, I remember that. I have not posted them yet, but I do remember, and I will post. I'm going to be busy the next couple of days. Actually, we're going up north golfing. Up north to play golf. Captain Darren says he agrees with me completely. Hey, John, good evening. How are you? Doesn't matter if you're late. Andy Weiss is here. Andy of Truck Trolley. It's funny. I'm working with Andy now of Truck Trolley, and I'll tell you what, other than this, my Rapid River knife that I use constantly every day, I can't think of another product that I use more than my Truck Trolley. I reach into the back of my truck every day to get something out. And every day the truck trolley is there. I pull it out. I no longer have to lean all the way up into the front of the truck bed. I don't have to use my old man hook to get stuff. Tomorrow, I'm putting the golf clubs on the truck trolley. Lately, I had hunting gear on the truck trolley. Last Thursday, I had my doe in my jet sled on the truck trolley. Makes it so much easier. Trucktrolley.com, trucktrolley.com. And Andy's brother-in-law and sister-in-law were at that Greenway Outdoors event last weekend representing Truck Trolley. I took every one of my tickets and I put them in the bin for a truck trolley. That's what I wanted to win. I wanted to win another truck trolley. Very good evening. How are you? Captain JT. No problem, buddy. It was nice to see you, Cap, at the Greenway Outdoors event as well. It's sad. Went to the cabin near Brightly last weekend, and man, there is no deer in that area anymore. That is sad, Jeff. I'm sorry to hear that. Brian, good evening. Wicked Ridge. Dan says Wicked Ridge has some great low price crossbows. There's one I would stay away from that's low price, and that's Barnett. And I only base that on my friends who are in the archery repair business, and they don't like the Barnetts. Stay away from the Barnetts. Chris, how are things in Kansas? How is the Mike Avery food plot doing? Hope all is well. Late for me, but still have to go to the course in the morning. I understand that, Kevin. We are actually, me, my wife Denise, and brother-in-laws and sister-in-laws are heading to Chestnut Valley Golf Course up near Harbor Springs tomorrow morning, and we're going to play tomorrow and Friday. It's going to be chilly tomorrow. Evening, Tim. Mad Jack, how you doing, buddy? All right, let me talk a little bit about who is on the show this weekend because it will lead me into some other topics. No, check that. I'll save that. Topics I want to discuss right now. The weather. The cooler temps feel pretty darn good, don't they? Let me just change that. Okay. Rain. Thank goodness we got some rain. The water in the pond behind the house here, the water level is the lowest I've ever seen it. We've lived here 10 years. I've never seen the water level in the pond as low as it is right now. until this last rain. This last big rain brought it up a few inches. It's still low. My dad always used to say the ponds won't freeze until they're full. We'll find out. Another observation of the pond behind the house, and this is directed towards all my friends who are goose hunters. You're not doing a good enough job. You need to get busy. Now, you can't hunt them on the pond right here, or I would invite you in here to hunt them because we're just inside the city limit. But you need to get busy on uh, geese, big, giant flying rats. Any thoughts on them spraying for gypsy moths, messing with oak trees, hardly any acorns? Jeff, are you saying you think there's a correlation between spraying for gypsy moths and acorns? Because I've never seen that correlation before, and I've had trees that were sprayed for gypsy moths, and I've never noticed a decrease in the number of acorns, but I wasn't looking for it either. Are you seeing that happen? The colors will, thank you, Linda. You're exactly right. The colors will be spectacular and it will be tough as heck to find your golf ball. In fact, I was running a little low on balls and I got a mental block. The Super Soft, Callaway Super Softs. So I went out and bought a dozen more because I'm going to go through some. Cliff, the fall colors here right now are absolutely beautiful, but we've already lost a fair number of leaves. Uncle Johnny, who's up there right now, says the fall colors are incredible. Johnny Bowler's back. So yeah, we've lost a few leaves already. Water level here is crazy high. I don't understand. I've seen 2 apple trees like 10 miles apart blossoming, which is completely out of season. Mother Nature's messed up. Okay, let's talk about my successful doe hunt. I told you going into the season that my goal for this year was to shoot a big old doe. And I did it last Thursday night. I'm sitting in a ground blind. It's an old ground blind that's been there forever. It's not one of my Wraith pop-up blinds. It's just an old permanent ground blind, so full of hunting history. It almost hurts to sit in there. It's so cool. Sitting over a food plot on our lease property about 6 o'clock. To be honest, about 6 o'clock, I looked up from my phone and they're coming out of the woods on the far side of the food plot are some deer. I thought, well, this could happen because I'm in a good spot. The deer have no idea I'm here. The wind is in my face. It's a pretty good sized food plot, so there's no guarantee they're going to make it close enough to get a shot. I knew I would not shoot beyond 30 yards. I would have had a shot 50 or 60 yards, but I knew I wasn't going to shoot beyond 30 yards. And I had that spot ranged and mentally marked and knew I wasn't going to shoot past it. Fawn comes in, big doe comes in, followed by a fawn and a big doe. Once the first big doe came in and it was obvious she was coming my direction, that's the one I was focused on. I'm like laser focused on this big doe. I verified first that she was a mature doe. Yes, absolutely. She's much bigger than the fawn she was with, and she had a big old donkey nose. She was a big old doe. She was a doe that needed to get shot, or should I say, wanted to get shot. She came in. She's looking right at me. I, I didn't spook her. She's looking right at me. She turned broadside, and she started to walk to her right, my left. Well, that was going to put her just out of my shooting window. So at this point, she's at about 20 yards. So I made a mental note to drop my crosshairs down on my crossbow because my top crosshair is 20 yards. I brought it down. Before she could get out of my shooting window, I grunted to her. She stopped. I pulled the trigger. I let an arrow go, and I double lunged her. She didn't go far. Bernie, I'm sorry you're having a problem, but I'm going to delete your comment. I don't want to get involved in that type of pandering here on my live stream. If you are truly in need, I'm sorry. If you are truly in need, there are lots of agencies and organizations these days that are more than willing to help out somebody in need. Please don't come on my Facebook page and ask people to send you money through PayPal. I don't want to be a part of it. If I met you in person and I could tell that you were truly in need, I would reach into my pocket and give you money, but I'm not going to allow it here on my Facebook page. Linda says more likely she thinks the low number of acorns is related to the midsummer drought. I would tend to go along with that too. Johnny Craves and Johnny Bowler are saying hello back and forth. Brent, good evening, buddy. How are you? Uh, yeah, okay, got you, Jeff. Brian, hey Brian, how you doing this evening tonight? Mike, always a pleasure, buddy. Dan, nice to have you along with us. Ken, thank you for that. Johnny Bowler says, hey, Uncle Johnny. Joe Beans, there's an article on M Live about thinning out the nuisance geese in suburban areas. I'm not subscribed, so I couldn't read it. I'm not subscribed either. Randy Iamurray, evening, Mike. Shot my first crossbow last week. How cool. What did you think? Crossbows are glad to hear, Brian. Good evening, David. Crossbows are a wonderful tool. It really pisses me off when people complain about hunters who use a crossbow. The way I look at it, they say, well, yes, if you're old or disabled, you should be able to use a crossbow. To which I say BS. Anybody who wants to use a crossbow can legally use a crossbow in Michigan and should be encouraged to use a crossbow if they want to. You know why? Because the goal of every ethical hunter should be to make a quick, clean, humane killing shot. If the crossbow will allow you to make a quick, clean, humane killing shot, what can possibly be wrong with it? I'd rather have you out there with a crossbow than say a recurve, right? Oh, a recurve hunters are revered, right? I hunted with a recurve. I know how hard it is. I know how hard it is to be accurate. And that's why I quit hunting with a recurve because I was no longer shooting enough to be proficient and accurate. I would rather have every hunter in Michigan using a tool that they could make a quick, clean shot with, good shot with, than somebody out there with a recurve or even a compound throwing arrows all over the place. The critics will say, oh, people with crossbows don't take their time and they wound more animals. That's baloney. It's baloney. Yeah, Johnny Bowler said he and I are married. He did. He said, we're married. Johnny said, when I was up there hunting with him, I had one night to hunt because Baby Bean was coming. Johnny said, if you don't shoot tonight, you're coming back. And I said, you just can't get rid of something like you just can't get rid of me, can you, Johnny? And he said, no, I think we're married. Maybe we are in some ways. I knew I'd get a bear too. That's why I wasn't worried about it. Well, this is not true. I did not get my bear and my deer in one trip out. That was my fourth sit before I got my deer. So I appreciate what you're saying, John Callison. It was my first and only sit to get my bear, and it was my fourth hunt to get that doe. Not that that's a lot of work, not that that's a lot of time, but it wasn't like I was the first night out there I shot one. She's a big, beautiful doe. She's all done now. I took her to my Amish friends, Stutzman's near Clare. They ground her into burger. So we got one entire big doe into venison burger. And then the bear I took to my friends at Michigan Brand Meat to be made into burger and brats. And I've since found out from Nick Grillo that that is ready too. So my bear is ready to be picked up and my deer is ready to be picked up. Talk about a freezer full of meat. Hey, no problem, John. No problem at all. Just setting the record straight. I don't want to lead people astray. So I got a freezer full. Okay, so let's go back. So now, honestly, I'm going to go back out and hunt, but now I'm seriously buck hunting. I don't need any more wild game. I don't need any more meat in the freezer. So there's no reason for me to shoot a doe unless it was to give it away to somebody who needed it. So I'm actually out there now waiting for a buck. And at the beginning of the season, I didn't think there were any bucks out there that I would shoot. But now I'm seeing some on camera, on our cameras and the neighbors, that I would indeed shoot. Linda chimes in here and helps us out. Per M Live, NRC voted on 1010 to authorize property owners to hire federal crews to collect and kill nuisance geese. It was determined relocating was not working. Yeah, it doesn't work. Doesn't work. Doesn't work. You know what will go into effect in 2025? You know what does work? Allowing hunters to thin out overpopulated animals. That's what works. Brent says a couple nice bucks on camera too. Brent, go get them, buddy. Okay, so when I tagged my doe, I was very conscientious about this because I'm not gonna do anything that's gonna get me in trouble. At least I'm gonna try to avoid everything I can that could possibly get me in trouble. Um, so I was not going to move that animal until I had a tag on her. So actually, I had forgotten my wallet that night that had my licenses in them. Fortunately, my grandson Trent was available. He ran my wallet out to me with my tags, and he actually helped me with the dough. So first thing he got there before I ever field dressed her is or transported her is I notched the tag appropriately for a doe on 1010, and then I tagged the animal. How did I tag the animal? I pulled the back off the sticker that is the tag. It was notched, and then I wrapped it around the lower leg of the doe. Now, in my mind, how do you tag an animal? You notch the tag and you permanently affix the tag to the animal. That's what I did. And I was going to put a zip tie around it, but I didn't have to because the doe's leg was small enough that I could wrap the tag completely around and stick the tag on itself. It wasn't just on hair. The tag was stuck on itself. It wasn't coming off. Put my hand around it, squeezed it, crimped it down. It wasn't coming off. The doe was tagged and it was laying in the jet sled in the back of my truck. I knew it wasn't going to be subjected to wind because I got a tonneau cover on my truck. It wasn't going to blow off. And I knew the first thing next morning I was going to take it up to Stutzman's and have him process it. So I wasn't worried about it coming off. So I then heard from some well meaning Facebook game wardens who said, you have to, and I'm still confused on this because the law as I read it says notch and permanently attach the tag to the animal. In my opinion, I had permanently attached the tag to that animal. Um, Somebody said, "Well, you should have put a zip tie around it." If I would have had a zip tie in my pocket, I probably would have, but I didn't. So I didn't. And as far as I'm concerned, that animal was legally tagged because according to the law, notch it and permanently attach it to the animal, which I did. Good. Others said, "Oh, well, it's gotta be attached to the antler. It's gotta be attached to the lower jaw. It's gotta be attached to the gambrel. And you have to use a shoelace or you have to use a zip tie." Not the way I read it. The way I read it is notch and permanently attach, and it is recommended that you use something to make sure the tag sticks. So I all right, Johnny. Have a good night, buddy. No, I did not run any camera video of the doe. Would have been cool because it was a perfect shot. I mean, I double lunged her perfectly. I was using the rec fixed blade heads. I have used those rec fixed blade heads on bear and turkey before, but never a deer. I haven't shot a deer in 15 years. That fixed blade head flies wonderfully. I've decimated 2 turkeys with it now, done a great job. The fixed blade left a blood trail on an Ontario bear that Stevie Wonder could have followed. So I was sticking with the fixed blade from Rec for my whitetail, and it did the job. She didn't go far. But to be honest with you, it didn't leave a tremendous blood trail, even though I double lunged her. So I'm going to go back to the Rec expandable heads. I've used those before and had good luck with those too. I'm not really sure why I switched from the expandable to the fixed blade other than just to experiment. But I'm going to go back to the Rec expandable, and I know that's just devastating. So I'm a Rec fan, REK, based out of Franklin with family-owned Michigan base. I love that. Stepson got his first buck with a bow the other day. Outstanding. We need to vote for biology to control hunting regulations. I thought that's what we already had. Yeah, I thought so too. Larry. I thought so too. Fall baseball is done Sunday. Hope to get out next week for the first time this year. Good luck to you, Brent. All right, Johnny. Talk to you later, buddy. Gotta love him. Yeah. I use a thin black zip tie, then slit the ear or the leg. That's actually the way that I tagged my bear, and Johnny Bowler verified this. I took the tag, I notched it, I took one of my shoelaces and I cut it off about 10 inches, and then I wrapped the tag over it, and then I cut a slit in the bear's ear and I tied it through the ear because I knew the bear was going to get a lot of handling and a lot of movement. With this doe, I wrapped it around her leg. I felt like it was permanently attached and I left it at that. The Stevie Wonder could have followed. That's not my line, Linda. I stole that line from Ted Nugent, but I do use it. Gotta love him. Craig says he shot a butterball doe with a rec fixed blade and performed great. It performed great for me too, Craig. It did the job. It performed very well. It just didn't leave the blood trail that I would like. So I'm going back to their expandables. It would be nice if we could tag them on our phone here in Michigan, like in Missouri. Agree. Um, but we're not completely behind the eight ball, behind the curve, because in Michigan, you can use your phone to use the Michigan DNR app to report the kill. I'm not surprised that she didn't drop. The only deer I've had drop where I shot them was a big Kansas 10 point, and I was using a rifle, a 270. The shock from that put the animal down. Every animal I've ever shot with a bow, let me think this through. Most of them didn't go far, but most of them didn't drop on the spot. That's more of a firearm of the effect of the trauma of the shock of the bullet. Evening, Martin. How are you? Good luck, Craig. That's the way I was looking at it, Bob. Robert. Evening, Mickey. So, am I doing anything with that bear hide? Yeah, I gave it to Scott Keatsman at Linwood Taxidermy. As I look around here right now, my office and the adjacent family room in the basement here, which is where all my mounts are, there's not room for another bear mount, and there's not room for another bear rug. I've got I got a bunch of them, and they're all beautiful. But I don't have room for another one. And so I just offered it to Scott Keatsman of Linwood Taxidermy. I did that with my bear last year from Ontario too. Let me see what Scott's got to say. Scott Gatsa says, I'm watching on YouTube. Congrats on your deer. If you were hunting on the ground, which I was, and you shot the doe, the reason you didn't get a blood trail is because you didn't have her downward angle exit hole. You have a level exit hole. True, Scott. That's a very good point. It was a level shot through and through. I mean, pretty much exactly level. Um, and you're right. Had I shot her from a tree stand, you would have had one exit hole down lower on the body and more room to bleed. Very good point, Scott. I can't argue with you, Scott. I could never argue with Scott because I'm always going to be wrong because you're one of the smartest guys I know. Next to Johnny Bowler, the bear whisperer. Okay, let me talk about who's on the radio show this week. My first guest. I'm a little dry tonight. The allergies this fall. Anybody else's allergies terrible this year? I actually went to the allergist and got a shot in the butt. Well, my hip, which usually cures me. It didn't cure me. My throat's really dry tonight. I'm going to have to put some Maker's Mark in there. Good evening, Mickey. Kevin Prophet, thank you. I should give you a tour of the trophy room. Kevin Prophet, I'm glad you're here. I have received your Facebook messages and tried to respond. And for some reason, Facebook will not let me respond to your messages. So I like talking with you. I like our conversations. I would like to continue them, Kevin. If in the future, if you have a question, will you just send me an email to mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com? Mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. And that way we can go back and forth. Craig says his deer had lots of fat, which closes the wounds. True. What do you mean other golfers, Johnny? I thought we had the whole course to ourselves. All right, we'll have it tomorrow. Or we'll see you tomorrow. Absolutely terrible this year. Allergies been kicking my butt too. Yeah, they're terrible. Thanks, Kevin. And then also hit me up again with the question you asked me recently on Facebook. I remember it being a very interesting question and one that I had some some limited knowledge on the answer. So let's follow up on that. Michelle agrees the allergies are terrible this year. Hey George, how are you? Steve, long time no see, Steve Rivet. This is why I had to leave. I had to go to work. Did you ever get Pastor's mic figured out, or did he just burn all three of them out? Evening, Ricky. How are you? Okay, so my first guest on the radio show this week is indeed Kyle Green from Greenway Outdoors. You got to check this guy and his crew out. They are first class young men. And I say young, I don't know how old they are, but they're young enough to be my sons. Good Christian guys, hardworking guys. I really like these guys. And their show starts season 2 on History Channel early in November. GreenwayOutdoors.com is the website. Batteries. The old battery. What do they call that thing? Gremlin. The old battery gremlin got you, eh? Well, that's an easy one to fix, though. Good. Then Tom Campbell of Woods and Water News. In my second hour, it is Captain John Littlefield of Premier Maritime Training. He's the guy who got me my captain's license. He can get you your captain's license. My captain's license is up for renewal this year, and I need to make sure to do that. PMTcaptains.com. If you've ever thought you wanted to get your captain's license, John is your guy. Then Evan Crowley from Brenton USA Firearms. I used my Brenton 350 to take my Michigan Bear a couple of weeks ago. I'm going to use my Brenton during the Michigan firearm season with a new scope and a suppressor. So Evan and I talked about Brenton. Then Justin Tomei of MUCC checks in. In our third hour, it's Sir Lancelot. Who is Sir Lancelot? Lance Valentine. I almost said of Teachin' Fishin'. Lance is rebranding from Teachin' Fishin' back to Walleye 101. So you can find him at walleye101.com. And then we wrap it all up with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Miner. Dave doesn't do a recipe this week. You know why? Because we spent the entire segment talking about Dave's big buck. Dave shot a very nice buck, like 175 pounds dressed, 19-inch inside spread, 9-point, I think it was. And the G2s, I'm telling you, the G2s are like this. The brow tines are this long. Beautiful, beautiful buck. So congrats to Dixie Dave. And he tells that story. The deer are really hitting the acorns. Our oaks had a bountiful year. Excellent. Good to hear. Hey, Perry, how are you? Good to hear, Ricky. I appreciate that. Captain JT says, I was impressed with the opportunity to spend some time with Kyle Green on Sunday. Oh, Sunday. Okay. I like you. I'm very impressed with him. What a gentleman on an important mission. Great kid. Great kid. Great kid. Linda says, Professor Lance Valentine knows all things walleye. He does. He does. I had to give him a nickname, right? I couldn't call him the Walleye Whisperer because I know other walleye whisperers, including Mark Martin and Mark Romanek. So I couldn't just call Lance the Walleye Whisperer. Wouldn't be fair. But I can call him Sir Lancelot, and he calls me Mikey. Mad Jack, a few years ago, the DNR used to supply a white plastic card that you wrapped your tag around, and it had a hole to use a zip tie or strap. I remember that. Yeah. Remember that. But you know what, Mad Jack? I don't want the DNR spending money on frivolous things like that these days. I'm also glad, and not everybody's going to agree with me, I'm also glad that the DNR is no longer spending money to print hunting guides. For the last several years, they printed thousands, tens of thousands, whatever the number was, and the vast majority of them never got used. They had to throw them away or hopefully recycle them. So since the DNR is funded by me and you, I don't want them wasting money on things that we don't need. So the old fashioned thing you're talking about, the white plastic card, and then hunting guides. Yeah. And a lot of people were really mad at first. They said the DNR doesn't print hunting guides anymore. They don't, but you can find them online and they're in, well, I'm looking at my phone right now. I'm using my phone as my camera. I would highly recommend that you download the Michigan DNR if you're a Michigan hunter or angler, that you download the Michigan DNR app to your phone because there the hunting guide is there. It's in the app. You can report your harvest on the app. You can buy your licenses on the app. You can use it as proof that you have a license. It's really pretty sweet. Mad Jack says, I agree. Tim says, I used to collect those guides. Well, that I get, Keep looking, Scott. You could also cut out a square of milk plastic jug to use instead of the card the DNR used to supply. Lots of ways to do it. Lots of ways to do it. My point is, I obviously feel that I legally tagged my deer, or I would have done it something a different way, right? I notched it. I wrapped it around the deer's leg down by it, just above its hoof. The tag reached around and touched each other, so it was tag stuck on tag. It wasn't just tag stuck on deer, and I considered that to be legal and adequate, and I still consider that to be legal and adequate. We had some people say, "Oh no, you should have put a zip tie around it." No, what they said was you needed to put a zip tie around it to be legal. I don't agree. If they would say you should have put a zip tie around it to ensure that the tag stays on there, I can't argue with that. But to stay legal, no, no, I don't believe that. And actually, I got to be honest, I'm trying to get somebody from the DNR on the show to answer that as an Ask Avery segment. Not having a lot of luck. Tim says he prints them off, keeps a copy at home and in the truck. That's a good point, Tim. And I will tell you this. I used to work with a lot of game wardens. I used to be a VCO, volunteer conservation officer, and a lot of my friends are still game wardens. Most of them, of course, retired at this point. Every one of them would routinely have a hunting and fishing guide with them at all times in their truck, in their boat, on their ATV, in their pocket. I don't know, but they always had a guide with them because a lot of these rules are so pick your word. Pick your word. John says, I also recommend the app, but I know Jason and Claire was waiting on the printed guides. I don't know if they got them yet or not. I'm not sure they print them anymore. John, I'm not sure they print them anymore. Thank you, Craig. I'm sure as well. Perry says it just have to be legible. Yeah. Well, convoluted is the word I was looking for. Thank you, Linda. That's one of the words I was looking for. Perry says it just has to be legible. I can tell you this for a fact that when I was working as a VCO, a volunteer conservation officer, we spent a lot of time looking at tags. And not once did I see an officer give anybody grief because the tag wasn't legible. If you notched it and you affixed it to the animal, I consider that doing your job. If it got wet or something and it's not legible, that's not the hunter's fault, in my opinion. And based on what I saw from working with game wardens, they didn't think it was your fault either. If you notched it and put it on the deer, that was good enough. I never saw anybody get in trouble because a warden looked at that and says, well, I can't read your tag. That's not the hunter's fault, in my opinion. And I'm very pro law enforcement, very much pro law enforcement. With the independence hunt going on this weekend, do the archery hunters have to wear orange? Well, I would say no. I would say no. However, I've also heard it described that if there is a season going on where firearms are in use, you have to wear orange. That's a good question. I don't know the answer. I may hunt this weekend, and I do not plan on wearing orange. Oscar and Joey's is completely gone now. Parking lot. Yep. I miss it too. Guides are coming out October 22nd. Now, how much sense does that make, Kevin? And I think you're saying this. How much sense does it make to come out with a guide on October 22nd? Oh, I'm like out of time. So you heard the music I started with, right? So I'm going to end with this music, a different music tonight. I decided to take up your advice. One of you suggested this, that I start with the rock music and end with the ballad of Mike Avery. And that's what I'm doing.
Every fish that you catch, every hunt you embrace, brings us closer to nature's grace.
Thank you again to Bill Hoffman for coming up with the ballad of Mike Avery. My name is Mike Avery. This is Wednesday Night Live. My website is MikeAveryOutdoors.com, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. My email address is Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for joining me. Have a great week, and I'll talk to you next time right here on Wednesday Night Live.